Emily
It's
Carter
so
grew up
peaceful out
surrounded
here.
by wide Texas skies
I'm
and
glad we
endless
came.
acres of
Me
land
too.
that belonged to her father, Richard Carter, one of
This
the
isn't
wealthiest
what I
ranchers in the
wanted.
state.
I know.
Their
We'll
ranch
fix
was
it.
famous,
How can I
white
trust
fences stretching
Yeah.
for miles, prize cattle, modern equipment, and workers who respected Richard's authority without question. Emily had everything money could buy: a grand house, private schooling, and a future already planned for her. From a young age, she was taught that status mattered, that family name was everything, and that love should follow wealth, not challenge it. Yet, despite her privileged life, Emily often felt something was missing. Unlike the lavish parties her father hosted, Emily preferred quiet moments outdoors. She loved walking near the edge of the ranch where the land turned rough and simple. That was where she first met Luke Miller, a poor farmer who owned a small, struggling piece of land next to her father's property. Luke worked alone most days, repairing fences by hand, planting seeds with old tools, and fighting drought with determination rather than resources. Emily noticed his honesty in the way he spoke, and strength in the way he worked without complaint. Their conversations started small, about weather, soil, and crops, but slowly grew deeper. Over time, Emily found herself drawn to Luke's simple dreams. He didn't talk about profits or power, he talked about building something real, something earned. With him, Emily felt seen not as a rancher's daughter, but as a person. Their bond grew quietly, away from judgment, rooted in shared respect and long walks under the Texas sunset. Emily knew her father would never approve. Luke had no money, no influence, and no impressive family name, everything Richard Carter valued most. When Emily finally gathered the courage to tell her father the truth, the reaction was exactly what she feared. Richard's face hardened with anger and disbelief. He called Luke a mistake, a poor farmer who would ruin her future. He reminded Emily of everything she would lose: comfort, inheritance, and her place in high society. Emily listened, her heart heavy, but her decision firm. For the first time in her life, she stood against her father's authority. Emily chose love over wealth. She packed her belongings, left the mansion she had grown up in, and walked away from the only life she had ever known. Her father disowned her that day, cutting her off completely. As Emily stepped off the ranch and toward Luke's small farmhouse, fear filled her chest, but so did freedom. She didn't know how hard life would become, but she knew one thing for certain: she would rather struggle with love than live comfortably without it. Life changed the moment Emily crossed the boundary of her father's ranch for the last time. The world she stepped into with Luke was quiet, rough, and unforgiving. Their farmhouse was small and weathered, with creaking floors, thin walls, and a roof that leaked during heavy rain. There were no hired workers, no modern machines, and no steady income. For the first time in her life, Emily felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. Yet every morning, when she saw Luke already awake, planning the day with tired but hopeful eyes, her doubts softened. Luke worked harder than Emily had ever seen anyone work. From dawn until nightfall, he plowed dry soil, repaired broken fences, and studied the land as if it were a living thing that could be convinced to survive. Emily refused to be a silent observer. She learned quickly how to carry water, mend torn gloves, plant seeds in straight rows, and cook simple meals over an old stove. Her hands blistered and her back ached, but she never complained. Each painful lesson strengthened her resolve. This was the life she had chosen, and she intended to honor it fully. Money became their constant worry. Equipment broke down, seeds were expensive, and the weather refused to cooperate. There were nights when they sat at the small kitchen table counting coins, wondering how long they could hold on. Emily sometimes thought of her father's warm house, the endless supplies, and the safety she had left behind. But those thoughts faded whenever Luke thanked her for standing by him. His gratitude reminded her that true partnership wasn't built on comfort, but on shared struggle. Neighbors were skeptical at first. Some whispered that the rancher's daughter wouldn't last a season in the dirt. Others warned Luke that pride alone wouldn't save his farm. Instead of responding with anger, Luke focused on improving his land little by little. He studied new farming methods, rotated crops, and repaired old irrigation lines by hand. Emily supported every effort, keeping records, planning budgets, and encouraging him when exhaustion took over. The distance between Emily and her father felt heavier with time. Letters went unanswered, and news of her life never reached the ranch. Though the pain of being disowned lingered, Emily refused to regret her choice. Each sunrise over their fields reminded her why she stayed. They had nothing guaranteed, no safety net, no powerful name to protect them. But they had determination, trust, and a shared dream. Slowly, signs of hope began to appear. The soil softened, the crops pushed through the ground, and their efforts started to take shape. Emily realized that while her father had taken away wealth, he could never take away her strength. Together, she and Luke were building something far greater than inheritance, a future earned by patience, resilience, and unwavering belief in one another. Years of struggle had finally begun to show their rewards. After countless sunrises and long days under the relentless Texas heat, Luke's farm was transforming. The fields, once barren and stubborn, now shimmered with life. Corn stalks stood tall and proud, wheat swayed in the gentle breeze, and the earth smelled rich and fertile. Every seed they had planted, every hour of toil, seemed to bloom in defiance of the hardship they had endured. Emily walked through the fields with Luke, her hands brushing against the golden crops, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and gratitude. Neighbors and local farmers began to take notice. They marveled at the small farm that had once seemed doomed, praising Luke's dedication and Emily's unwavering support. Even those who had doubted them whispered about their determination, the way the couple had turned dry soil into one of the county's most promising harvests. Invitations came for Emily to speak at local community gatherings, and farmers sought advice on irrigation and crop rotation, all eager to learn from the couple who had proven that passion and perseverance could rival wealth and privilege. The news eventually reached Emily's father, Richard Carter. At first, he dismissed it as exaggeration. How could a poor farmer, working without the vast resources of his ranch, achieve anything noteworthy? Curiosity, however, gnawed at him, and pride pushed him to see it for himself. One crisp autumn morning, Richard made the long drive to the edge of the county where Luke and Emily had built their life from scratch. As he approached the farmhouse, he was struck by the sight of vibrant fields stretching farther than he had expected. Emily noticed her father before he spoke, standing silently at the fence, his expression unreadable. For the first time in years, she felt a flutter of nerves, but it was different from fear. This was hope tinged with anticipation. Luke, sensing her tension, offered a reassuring smile. Together, they led Richard through the fields, pointing out where the seeds had grown tallest, where the irrigation had worked best, and how their labor had brought life to every corner of their farm. Richard walked slowly, his hands behind his back, eyes scanning every detail. The sweat and calluses on Luke's hands told him more than words ever could. He watched Emily's eyes light up with pride as she explained the work they had done. For the first time, Richard understood that this was not a lucky accident, but the result of relentless effort, unwavering teamwork, and love that had endured trials he had never imagined. By the time they reached the center of the farm, surrounded by golden crops waving in the wind, Richard could no longer deny the truth. He had seen wealth all his life, money, land, influence, but he had never seen anything like this harvest. Here was success born from courage and resilience, not inheritance. Here was proof that his daughter's choice had been guided not by foolishness, but by a deep and enduring commitment to a life built together. Emily's father, once full of anger and pride, felt the first stirrings of respect, humility, and admiration. He understood now that love and hard work could yield a harvest far richer than any fortune. Richard Carter stood silently in the middle of Luke and Emily's thriving farm, the golden stalks of wheat swaying around him like a living testament to perseverance. For years, he had judged Luke as unworthy, believing that wealth and social standing defined a person's worth. Yet here, in the vast expanse of flourishing crops, he could see something far more valuable: determination, integrity, and a love that refused to be broken by hardship. Every corner of the farm spoke of late nights, early mornings, and unwavering dedication, a life built brick by brick, seed by seed, sweat by sweat. Emily watched her father closely, waiting for a sign of acknowledgement. She had feared this meeting for years, imagining it ending with anger or rejection. But as she observed the way his gaze softened while he ran his hands over the corn stalks, she realized that pride was giving way to understanding. He saw Luke not as a poor farmer, but as a man who had earned every bit of success through his own hands. And more importantly, he saw his daughter's happiness, radiant and unshaken, grounded not in wealth but in love and respect. Luke, ever humble, stepped forward to explain their farming methods, crop rotations, and the ways they had nurtured the land. Richard listened attentively, nodding along, occasionally offering questions that showed genuine curiosity rather than judgment. The conversation was no longer about status or inheritance, it was about effort, wisdom, and the fruits of relentless commitment. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the fields, Richard felt a rare sense of humility. He realized that wealth could buy many things, but it could never teach the lessons that struggle and perseverance instilled. Finally, Richard spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "Emily, I see now that I was wrong. I judged too quickly, and I let pride blind me to what really matters. Luke, you've built something extraordinary here. Not just crops, but a life filled with honesty, hard work, and love. I misjudged you, and I am sorry. Emily felt a lump in her throat as tears welled in her eyes. For years, she had carried the pain of her father's disapproval, yet now she saw the bridge of reconciliation forming before her. She smiled gently, stepping forward to take his hand. Thank you, Father. That means more than you know. I never wanted to choose between family and love, but I had to follow my heart. I'm glad you see that now. Richard's eyes glistened with unspoken emotions, pride replaced by respect, and judgment replaced by admiration. The three of them stood together, looking out over the fields that had been born of resilience and devotion. That day, the farm became more than a place of work. It became a symbol of reconciliation, understanding, and the power of perseverance. Emily's father returned home with a newfound respect for both Luke and his daughter, carrying the lesson that love and dedication could triumph where wealth alone could not. Emily and Luke continued their life on the farm, strengthened not just by their harvest, but by the restored bond of family and the proof that true success is measured by courage, love, and the hearts of those who toil with purpose.